Hi, this is Andy.
And hi, this is Sunny, and you are listening to the Business Over Chai podcast.
Our mission is to share startup stories that will inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs across the South Asian community. Today we have Deepak Tailor as our guest. Deepak has been an entrepreneur from the age of 16. At one point he ran 70 different websites and a few years ago founded latestfreestuff.co.uk. He also made it onto Dragon's Den, where he was given 3 offers. And in addition to all of these successes, Deepak wrote a book called How to Live for Free that became an Amazon bestseller. So without further ado, welcome Deepak.
Hello, how are you doing?
Great, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great to have you on the show, Deepak.
No, it's a pleasure.
Well, Deepak, I wanted to kind of go through a few questions about this journey of entrepreneurship. So I would love to kind of first begin and ask you that question, like how did this all start as it relates to entrepreneurship?
So my kind of journey to entrepreneurship began when I was still in school, I think. I was aged around 16, might have been 15, 16, and I became fascinated with this world of just kind of making money online, or this kind of new thing that had developed was when I was 15, 16, it was like this new thing that was the internet, where people were kind of talking online. They were building social media profiles, they were selling things online, they were doing things online. And it was kind of completely different to the world that I knew growing up, where you had to go to a shop if you wanted to buy something. So I became fascinated with this world. And my first place that I really started was eBay. And eBay was a brand new kind of marketplace at that point. Before, if you wanted to sell something, I feel like you would have had to go to a boot sale, or you had to go to a market and kind of like sell your goods there, or whatever you want to get rid of. But eBay kind of brought the world to kind of your doorstep if you wanted to sell something. And the first thing I'd done when I was around 15 or 16 was kind of just started selling stuff around my house. It was my mum's possessions. Sometimes it was like clocks. Sometimes it was plates. Just kind of over time, over like the first 6 months, she would just notice things going missing. And I was like, no, I just sold it on eBay for like £12 to someone in Scotland. So it was kind of that got me kind of stuck in this and fascinated by this kind of online world where you could connect with so many people on the internet. And kind of from there, it really kind of kicked off just because I started learning more and more about making money in the internet. And kind of from there, I realized that I could kind of sell more products. And I began ordering kind of these SIM cards online, where you could order, like, kind of at that point there was like Vodafone and T-Mobile and Orange and all the other networks that don't exist anymore. You could order these SIM cards online, and I started selling those. And I realized you could only kind of make £2-3 from each one, but if I had 30 or 40 that I've ordered to my house, it was like a good amount of money for like a 16-year-old at that point, considering all my other friends were out and about playing football or going to the cinema or playing tennis. And I was sitting there kind of selling all the stuff I had in my house. So that's really where it kind of began, and it kind of kicked on from there.
That's awesome. Tell us about what latestfreestuff.co.uk is.
So latest free stuff is kind of a gap I saw in the market. So it was launched in 2012, I think it was. And we were still in a recession at that point in the UK, because kind of there was a big financial crash, and people were really struggling to pay their household bills and really just struggling with money generally. So I tried to fit that gap where people wanted to try new products and kind of try before you buy almost. But instead of someone signing up to, let's say, hundreds of different Facebook pages, signing up to all your favorite brands, email newsletters, just on the off chance that they kind of send you an email saying, here, try a free sample of this product, could be anything. I put everything into one place. So it's almost like a supercharged directory of everything you could ever want, that is completely free on the internet. There's no postage, there's no delivery charge. There's, I think, like 29 to 30 pages of just stuff. There's around, I think we had like 800 to 900 freebies on there. It takes you, we've had one of our members go through the whole site, and it takes you about 2 hours, 3 hours just to order everything on the site, go from page one right to the end, just to order everything. And it could be anything. So it could be samples of like food or drink. There's kind of perfume and cologne. We've given away newspapers. We've given away food. It could be literally, it's every brand you've ever heard of at some point or another has given away samples or kind of given away freebies just to people to kind of try them before, and then in the hope they go to the supermarket and actually go and buy the product. So that's kind of like a roundup of what it is.
Sure. And then how do you set that up? Do you like speak to the company that has the free sample and say, hey, I want to host your free sample on my website?
So we actually, with some of the brands, we set up a partnership where one of our brands that we work with in the past was Procter & Gamble. They give away free samples of products through a website called Super Savvy Me, which is their consumer-facing portal where they give away Oral-B toothpaste or Fairy Liquid, or it could be, I don't know, it could be any sample that they have in their kind of in their brands. Brand portfolio. So we actually work with them to sign more members up to their platform. So it's kind of, rather than consumers signing up to their company website, they would actually sign up directly to the consumer-facing brands, where they'll sign up for like a free sample of toothpaste, and then they might get vouchers and coupons in the future, which they can claim and redeem in the future. So those kind of like partnership like that would pay £1 to £2 per member who signs up to it. And if you imagine, we sometimes get 60 to 70,000 people a day seeing our messages, it kind of adds up eventually into kind of big kind of, we can deliver big numbers eventually. But predominantly like 70 or 80% of it is actually us just going around the internet kind of collating different things that are running all the time. So if a new beauty brand launches a new free sample, our content team and social team will go and find it, write about it, and post it on our website. So that's where most of the content actually gets created. It's not us speaking to the brand at all. eBay kind of kicked me into selling other things on the internet, because kind of eBay was great and it was amazing to sell all these different things. But I kind of eventually got a bit annoyed of physically going to the post office or going to different places to post all my things out. So I actually ended up buying lots of things from Poundland. And Poundland was like a brand new thing at that point. It was like you go into a shop and buy, I don't know, like a mug or like a t-shirt for like £1, which was like this incredible thing at that point. And that's what kind of kicked me into learning how to make money in other places, because I was walking to Poundland every day, buying like 10 or 20 different things, going on eBay, selling them for £3-4, and then picking those things up, packing them, and then going straight to the post office to ship them off to wherever they need to go. And it was that process that kind of, I got kind of like not frustrated, but it was like I thought there was a better way of making money on the internet. I knew there must be something where I could make money on autopilot, or something where I didn't have to kind of deal with the logistics of things. And so kind of like at that point, I realized I kind of moved into selling digital products on eBay. I realized that, why am I going to the post office or going to shops to buy all these different things? And I started selling books on the internet. Basically, on eBay, you could. I think at one point I had like a learn how to speak Spanish ebook that I was selling for like 99p. And kind of all my friends in sixth form and kind of first year of uni were partying it up, and I was kind of sitting there sending all these PDFs off to people who had bought a 99p ebook on the internet. But that was theoretically just made my life a bit easier, because instead of me going to the post office all the time, I could kind of email these things over to people. But that was also kind of the changing, kind of like a point where I just realized that eBay was good, but I wanted something even better. So I kind of unknowingly kind of went on a journey of trying to explore how to make money in other avenues that weren't eBay. So I started building my own websites just because I realized eBay was taking too much commission from me. So the 99p ebook, there was maybe like 10 or 15p, which was eBay fees. And then you have to pay a PayPal fee, which is like another £1. So they were taking too much margin. And I realized if I could cut eBay out of it, I could probably get the kind of gross margin even higher. So I created my own websites to kind of sell all these kind of Spanish and like kind of language guides, and then started kind of running other websites. At one point, I owned a website template store where I could where someone could create their own websites. I started selling creating another website. So I actually created my own free SIM card website where people could order SIM cards from my own website. And I actually partnered with all the other SIM card networks. So they were actually paying me commission every time someone ordered something from my house. So rather than me going off to the post office and selling things, I started getting paid by the big networks to promote their stuff. And that kind of really did kick on into starting Later's free stuff, because the free SIM card store was really good, but I wanted it to be even bigger. And by the time I kind of finished uni, I think I ended up with about 70 different websites. So it was kind of a big jump, but it was me just exploring how different things work, I guess.
70 different websites. I mean, how do you even manage that? Tell us about some of the spaces they were in. Like, I mean, you talked about website design and SIM cards that were free. I mean,
So I also had a kind of it was a bit weird, but I also had a free photo book, or maybe you can actually print photos on the internet. So it's like a free comparison engine for where to print your photos online. And then I also had another shop that was a spy equipment shop. That one had a funny background story, but I set up my own e-commerce store that was selling spy equipment. Just because kind of that summer before, I'd actually had kind of actually no, it was a Christmas job I had in Harrods. Was actually working for a spy equipment shop, and one day I accidentally noticed they had like a sheet of all of their cost prices, and they were selling kind of like spy cameras that were similar to your kind of car keys, where you can have a car key spy camera on your keys and record things as you go around. And they were selling these things for like £600-700 in Harrods to people, and they were buying them for like £4 or £5 on the internet. So I realized it's a crazy, crazy margin that they were making on these products because they were just shipping them in from China. So I got in touch with the suppliers in China, created my e-commerce store, and then started selling them for like £50 to £60. So much lower on the internet, but I didn't have the same clientele as that shop in Harrods, basically.
how do you even manage that operation of 70 different websites?
So I guess it's managed in a kind of approach where I was a 20-year-old, where I didn't really consider things that would break. I just assumed everything would carry on running, and kind of it actually did in a way. So every website wasn't actually built by me. I always had a team of people who were in the Philippines or in India developing and building things, because I don't really have a coding background. And I still, if you asked me to code something today, I wouldn't have too much idea of how to build a whole website. But I was hiring these developers through other platforms, where I was paying someone, I think at that point it was like $3 or $4 an hour to build things for me, and they had all the kind of PHP and HTML knowledge that I just had no idea what they were doing. So I always had someone on hand to help me, just because I didn't have the technical background. But they were the people who, if something broke overnight, I would send them an email message and they would be the ones to fix something. Or if I wanted to launch something else, I'd be like, guys, can you launch this? I've had this great idea. Can you do this by this week? And they would actually go and do it. But they were actually kind of like, compared to some of their clients, I guess I was more of like a regular customer. So it seemed to kind of work well for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're like outsourcing the technical side of your work. How did you find those people? How did you find a software developer in the Philippines and in India?
So I had a website called Upwork.com, which still exists today. That was the kind of, there was actually another website before that. I don't know if this website's around now, but it was called digitalpoint.com, which was at that point just like a mega forum of just connecting people to people and people discussing how they make money on the internet. So that's where I found my first few developers. But kind of like now, if anyone wants to go and do it, Upwork's probably our best source. And even to this day, we still hire people for our current businesses on Upwork to kind of, when we need people to work on a specific task, well, that's one kind of the first place we'll go to go and like fill a gap for whatever role we have.
So Deepak, it'd be great to if you can talk us through how your experience of going on BBC's Dragon's Den TV show was. For those listeners who are unfamiliar with the show, Dragon's Den is a TV show which allows entrepreneurs to go and pitch their business idea to 5 successful multimillionaires who can decide if they'd like to invest in your business. So how was that for you, Deepak?
It was really, really good. So on Dragon's Den, I actually took the website that I developed, I think in like 2011 or 2012. It was a site called Latest Free Stuff that I took to there. This site, I never expected to be as big as kind of even an opportunity to take it to Dragon's Den, because it was, I assumed it might have been one of the 70 small websites that I'd launched, but this was just another one that kind of, it was like a year or two into the website launching that I thought we might have some traction. And then Dragon's Den, kind of the team from there actually reached out to me, which funnily enough, I didn't expect. And they said, you look like you have a website that's growing. It looks quite cool. It looks like a weird and wonderful new concept where you can just kind of come to the website and get free stuff. So it seemed quite good to them, the TV researchers, and said, would you want to come on the show? And Dragon's Den was kind of at that point kind of one of my favorite shows, if not probably my favorite show. It's probably that or Apprentice is probably up there somewhere.
Same as me.
In
Same
terms
as me.
of I think for loads of people.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was kind of like, if you could pick any show in the world, that would be the show I would want to go on at some point. But I never kind of even would have ever dreamt of going on the show. And when they reached out to me, I just kind of like didn't even think twice about it. But then the more I thought about it, the more I kind of wanted to go on it. And then kind of the process of even going on the show, there's like 4 or 5 steps to get into it, but each step goes for different people. So they start you off at kind of like a researcher stage, which is kind of like in other people's worlds. It's just like an intern working at the BBC who just kind of vets everyone who comes through the door just to make sure they have some kind of idea of what they're doing. And then from there, I had to do a pitch at their studios. They take you into another studio a few weeks later, and then like a few weeks later, out of the blue, after I'd done like a small pitch and recorded it and sent it to producers, got an email to say, yes, you've been accepted to go on the show, which was very cool, and also very, very nerve-wracking, because I'm not normally the most confident person in terms of someone who kind of is very good in the limelight. I would prefer to be the person who is sitting at the back of the kind of room, not standing up on stage, not being someone on TV. But this kind of, like, you didn't have a choice. Like there was no other way around this. You had to be kind of front of stage, and there was no other way to do it. So the kind of time I went on the show, it was the hardest thing I done, but only because I realized how big an opportunity it was. And I actually took time away from the company. So we only had a team of 2 people at that point in the company. So I kind of said to them, one was a content writer, one was a salesperson. I said, I'm going to leave for a little while, and I need like 2 months just to prepare this thing that I'm doing. And they actually I actually went back for a little while just because they helped me with the pitch, because I realized something like this I just had to practice for. So one of the things I done to practice for the pitch was I actually spent like 2 months just kind of watching other Dragon's Den pitches. And that was one of the first things I done with the show, because I just watched it from kind of season 1 all the way to season 15 or 16 at that point, just systematically every single episode. And I noted down what went well, what didn't go well, where they struggled, where they kind of went well. And then my team actually, my team and me actually drew up about 1,000 questions on anything and everything that we thought might come up during the pitch. So it was everything to do with kind of sales, like what's your revenue for the year, and then what's your profit like in 2 years' time, or what was your profit 5 years ago. I feel like that's where everyone always falters, where they just forget how much money they made last year. But I also went into like social media stats and everything to do with clients, everything to do with the website, with hosting, with a long-term plan where we want to go. So I knew systematically what the answer to all of these 1,000 questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going to say, well, that sounds like that 2 months preparation was excellent, because I watched you pitched, and I thought it was really well prepared, very well received. You came across as, confident, even though you say, you don't necessarily like the limelight. You came across very confident, I thought, which was good. Yeah, please tell us how the experience was going on the show. What happens behind the scenes? Talk us through your day there.
So they actually buy you a ticket to go up to. So I thought it was filmed in London, but it wasn't. It's actually filmed in a very big warehouse on the outskirts of Manchester. So like in the middle of nowhere. I assumed TV was kind of this glamorous thing, but it's really not. It's filmed in the middle of nowhere, and they kind of like they get you a train up to there, and you start the day at like 4:30. I think I got there like 4:30, 5 o'clock.
In the morning?
And they have in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Very, very early start, and I actually packed hundreds and hundreds, like 2 suitcases full of like all the free samples and freebies that I'd received for the last year, and kind of wheeled them all the way up to Manchester, and put them out on a table. And then they had 4 or 5 kind of other entrepreneurs on that day that they were filming, because there's a 2-3 hour gap between each one that they film, just because they need time to set up the cameras, set up the studio, do different things in the back end to get everything prepared. So kind of from 4 a.m, I think they start the first pitch at like 7, 8 a.m. once they prepare everything. And then if you're kind of towards the end, you have to stay there till 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, whilst you're kind of in, I think they call it a green room, which is just like a waiting area where you're just sitting around kind of drinking tea and coffee basically. But yeah, kind of that day, I think I was halfway through, maybe towards the end, and they make it the most stressful environment you can imagine, because when you walk into that stage, kind of they take you from the green room up to the TV studio, and they make it very stressful, because at kind of any one point you've always got hundreds of lights on you, and then kind of hiding around the whole kind of black space that you see, you just see cameras everywhere, and you've got all these kind of people milling around doing different things, playing around with cameras, playing around with clipboards. So it's only you, the 5 dragons, and kind of I can see why lots of entrepreneurs falter, just because it's such a stressful environment for some people. But I guess it was the hardest thing I've done, just because I guess that's what they create. But I think I prepared well for it. So I thank you for saying I came across well, but I was scared, and like completely scared the whole time. But the first minute and a half was probably the most scariest, because you don't get to talk to someone. You're not in like a conversation with someone. But I think it started off quite well, just because they were intrigued by this kind of a website that was giving away free stuff, and we were actually profitable by that point. So from then on, it went quite well. But I guess one of the most stressful parts of it was I was actually in there for an hour and 45 minutes, I think, in the end.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize that. They assume it's going to be like a 5-minute presentation or 10 minutes that you're in there. But on average, I think I read now that most pitches are at least around 2 hours. And and that I think that surprises a lot of people. So I think that adds to the stress because you're standing there on like a spot for a very long time, grilled by the dragons. So yeah, definitely one of the most stressful things I've done.
Oh wow, it sounds like a stressful day, but it paid off in the end, didn't it, Deepak? I watched your pitch and you received three offers, I believe. How did you decide on the offers? Because they were from three very different dragons, and there was difference in the equity as well. How did you come about a decision on which one to choose? We're just going to take a quick break. If you like what you're hearing, please remember to hit the subscribe button, and we'd love to hear your feedback, so please remember to leave us a review. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter on our handle Business Over Chai, or on our website at businessoverchai.com. Thanks again, and now back to the podcast.
So I think they were different in equity, but only one of them gave what I wanted. So theoretically, it was quite an easy decision, just because they didn't make it too difficult for me. Because I think one of the dragons asked for 20%. I think it was Tuka Suleiman who asked for it, and she asked for he asked for 20%. But I guess behind the scenes, you didn't see the kind of half an hour discussion we had between each other about how things were going to work, what he'll give to me. They kind of cut all of that out of the TV.
Right.
And one of the other dragons had offered it for 15%, but Deborah Meaden was the one I actually went for in the end, mainly because I think at that point, she had other tech investments, and they had done well in the past. And so it kind of made my life a bit easier. But I guess if I had kind of put down a wish list of who I wanted, I think Peter Jones would have been up there, but only because he's such a big tech investor and knows everything about kind of affiliate marketing. And he was the one person who I didn't really expect the dragons to know much about our industry, but he was the one person who really understood the website right from the start, and knew about industry, knew about the business model, knew how it worked, and you could tell he was clued up straight away.
Brilliant, fantastic. And then once that day is over, what happens then? Did the investment happen? What happens then afterwards?
So I actually accepted the investment on the day, and you don't hear from the dragon for a while, and there's this kind of period where you go through due diligence, go back and forth with the dragon, just kind of going through all the paperwork that exists with like an investment deal, and that's where something unexpected happened. So we eventually actually parted ways. So the investment didn't go through fully, but mainly because there's a few things that I disagreed with, there's a few things that she disagreed with, but it was kind of both parties couldn't find an agreement in the end. But all of this happened kind of 5-6 months after all the filming have stopped. So there's big lags between when things are actually kind of you shake hands or something, and when you actually can get signed off or something. And then kind of getting on TV was another 6 months down the line. So the periods when something's recorded and actually put on TV, there's sometimes up to a year lag between things. But ultimately, the investment didn't go through. But it's basically, I didn't think there was too much kind of I guess the dragons have a lot of investments, and we couldn't find a fit together where they would help enough with our business to actually make it succeed and grow.
Right. Okay.
But I guess the kind of TV surprised us. So when it went live on TV, it was very unexpected what happened.
I'm sure. And then what impact did it have actually going on through the show in terms of your business? I mean, I can imagine that being great advertising for your businesses.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that surprised me, because I guess the main thing I was looking for was actually the investment. And I was actually a bit sad that it didn't go through, because it would have helped to actually skyrocket us really fast, kind of even faster than what we're doing now. But kind of a knock-on effect of that, which I didn't realize at the time, was actually the TV exposure was really good and really, really big, because I didn't expect so many people to come through to our site. But I'll give you an example. We actually had there was kind of a dating app that was filmed the same time as me. I think it was like a dating app called double. I can't remember now what they were called actually, but they had actually been on TV the week before me, and they were actually filmed on the same day. And when I spoke to them the week before, just to ask how their service coped or whether their website crashed, they said they'd got like 15,000 downloads out of the whole show. So that's kind of what we prepared for. And kind of our developers set up lots of different kind of servers just to make sure something doesn't fail, because I feel like this is the one thing that goes wrong, because every time I watch the Dragon's Den pitch, I go immediately to their website and their website's crashed because of heavy demand, and you can't buy the thing you're looking for. Kind of there's just nothing exists at that point. But when we went live, we were actually really shocked with what happened, because normally we get around 100 to, well, probably about 75 to 100 people on the site at any one time. And we actually kind of 2-3 minutes into the pitch, we ended up with having 80,000 people a minute coming to the site. So there was like a massive load of kind of people who had immediately gone to the internet and typed latest free stuff into Google and tried to start claiming their freebies, I guess, and their samples. And in kind of that one Sunday evening when the show was actually broadcast, we signed up 250,000 new members. And that was only about 4 hours that we were live. And it kind of surprised me, but all of it actually came on the Sunday. It wasn't actually later, so I only watch things in iPlayer. I don't think I watch live TV anymore. But we had almost no traffic from anyone watching it later on catch up. Everything happened on that Sunday evening when it was broadcast live on TV, which surprised me at that point quite a lot.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
So Deepak, tell us about the book that you wrote.
So about a few years into kind of setting up the website, I was reading another book called The Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. And he says the best way to kind of, for you to become that key person of influence, the kind of main person that everyone comes to, is actually to write a book about your industry, and therefore kind of become that go-to person in that industry where people will always come to. So I actually wrote a book called How to Live for Free. And it's like 250 pages of ideas that I came up with about how you can actually live a kind of lifestyle for completely free. And it goes through everything from kind of the extremes of kind of extreme couponers. I don't know if anyone's heard of extreme couponers before, where you can sign up to lots of different websites, claim coupons, and actually redeem them all at the supermarket. So you could have a £75 shop, and you're someone sitting there scanning all their different coupons, and they can get it almost for like 50p or 40p sometimes. And you can see the receipt where they've got coupon after coupon where all the products kind of add up to each other. But then you get to kind of the other side of it, where you've got people who are kind of dumpster diving and like doing things on the other side, where they're kind of picking up food from different farms where they're giving away different things. But then you've also got lots of ideas in there where you can go to events and sometimes get free food. I know lots of events all over the place now sometimes give free food. There's free pizza and free drinks. And sometimes that's a good meal for someone. So there's lots of ways where people can kind of live for free completely. But one of the kind of big ideas I had in there was when I went kind of during my backpacking year, I went traveling to 70 different countries. And I actually met someone who was at that point traveling around the world for completely free. He had left from Southampton and signed up to a website which connected him to other people who own kind of yachts. Imagine the kind of like the most expensive yachts in the world, and kind of the families who own those yachts, they're trying to get their yacht from Southampton to the Maldives, and you can't ship a yacht, so someone needs to kind of sail it all the way there. So he actually signed up to get paid to be kind of a ship hand, someone who can just work on the ship, and they actually pay you, they feed you all the way whilst you sail this boat from Southampton all the way to Maldives, and then the family takes over with the boat. So he spent at that point, I think 2 years just traveling around the world through this website. getting paid and kind of getting free food whilst he kind of sailed around the world and explored different places. So there's things like that in there, which was kind of the reason I wrote the book, just to kind of give people more ideas on how to actually do it.
That's awesome. How long did it take you to write that book?
I think it was like a year project. So I actually wrote the book with a colleague of mine who's actually at that point was just a friend, a guy called Tom Church. And then we actually ended up starting a website together called Latest Deals. But he at that point, one of his kind of goals at that point was to edit and launch a book. So we both launched it together. He kind of like was the brains of the book, of trying to work out how to actually put everything together, because technically to get a book from kind of like your Word document into a format that Amazon accept on the Kindle version was a bit complex. So he helped me with the editing. We also had a writer who helped with kind of some of the grammar and making sure everything's kind of produced correctly. And then kind of, it took about a year to launch everything, but it's probably one of the best decisions we made, just because we didn't expect it to do well. If it had got even a couple of downloads or a couple of kind of people who ordered the book, it would have done well. But I think to date, we've kind of sold around 20 to 30,000 copies now, which is like much more than we ever expected it to do. And even today, even to date now, we still get a couple of people who get it every single day. So it still trickles along where people are still using it.
Let's talk about Latest Deals. And that's your latest venture as well. So tell us about that and elaborate on what got you there and what it does.
So Latest Deals was something I always wanted to set up, but I never had the kind of capacity to do it. Just because Latest Free Stuff at that point was getting bigger and bigger, and I was the only person running it. But Latest Deals is a concept where I wanted to help people save money just by kind of looking for bargains and deals and discount codes, because we didn't predominantly on Latest Free Stuff, it was all freebies and samples. So we didn't tend to work with any companies if they had 50% off a product or 75% offer product. So Latest Deals was to kind of fit that gap, where we could then work with any company in the UK who wanted to discount or give away free stuff in the UK. But Latest Deals, I realized, was a much bigger project, because we were kind of competing with another company called Hot UK Deals, which some of the people listening might know, might not, but they had been around for 10 to 15 years. And they were the only place you could go in the UK at that point to find bargains and deals shared by other people. But we wanted to set up a new platform where we were a bit more open, and we could actually attract more people and actually have like a more diverse audience, because on Hot UK Deals it's full of there's a lot of tech deals, there's a lot of gaming deals, there's a lot of deals that are focused towards men, and we predominantly tried to focus ours towards the kind of female side of things. So it created that kind of gap that where people wanted to kind of get beauty products or household products, we kind of fell into that area. But to launch it by myself wouldn't have been possible. So I think in 2016, I launched it with the help of two other co-founders who launched the site together. And we've kind of just taken it from there, and that skyrocketed out of our control too.
Yeah. And there's now 3 co-founders. What's all the different functions or skills that you have as a collaboration of this venture?
So Tom, we've got two other co-founders. So Tom Church is our kind of marketing / PR guru. He's the one that's got us on the front page of the Sun and the Daily Mirror, and the Telegraph and all these different places. So he gets us in the newspapers, and it's really kind of like the person who stands out on the site. It's just an all-round great person. And then we've got Tom Kelsey, who's our developer, who actually built a smaller version of what Latest Deals had become. He'd actually started building it a couple of years before we even came up with this site. But he's kind of an incredible developer, but he didn't have the marketing expertise to actually grow it from the kind of 100 to 150 users he had at that point for a year. He couldn't grow that to kind of, I think 2 weeks ago, we hit 1 million members on latest deals. So he couldn't get it from the kind of 150 members to how do you get to 1 million within like 2-3 years.
So Deepak, clearly you're a person with lots of business experience, so it'd be great to give our listeners some tips. So what tips would you give someone perhaps thinking about starting their first business, whether it be in e-commerce or another space?
I think with e-commerce, the kind of best thing you could do is actually look at what other people are doing. But mainly because the people who you might be looking at, other websites, they would have gone through what you're about to do right at that moment, which is the research, the planning, the testing whether something works. So I always say to people, if you found a Facebook advert about something and they're constantly showing up all the time, it means that someone's done something and something works very well. There's no other reason that Facebook advert keeps popping up all the time. So I would say if you're starting off right from scratch, the best thing is not to reinvent the wheel. Go and kind of develop or launch a product which you know very well, and you know the background of, the cost, the pricing, the kind of profit margin, and kind of take it from there. Don't go and kind of invent a rocket that goes into space, just because that's not going to be the easiest place to start. It would be best to take off market share off people who are already doing quite well, and follow in the footsteps of what they've done well already, and actually break down everything you think they've done well already and take the best parts of it, just because that's the best way to start off, especially, and the kind of least riskiest way to start, just because I think it's 70 to 80% of companies just fail in the first year, but mainly just trying to de-risk yourself when you launch your new thing.
Brilliant, fantastic. And I think you touched on this earlier when your co-founder Tom found it difficult to scale up. But say someone's founded a business and it's getting its name out there. How do they scale it up to get the sort of audience sizes that perhaps latest free stuff is getting now?
So I think the best way we've done is actually reverse engineer things. So we'll actually start with who is our target market. And where do they exist? So the first 1,000 people we had on latest deals actually existed in something called Facebook groups. They were the kind of places where people were discussing what's free and what samples are around and what's kind of like what's really cheap right now, and is there like a misprice on this kind of pair of shorts, and should they be like 20p right now, should they not? And we kind of brought those users into our platform. So the best way we actually scale things up is actually bringing all the audiences together in one place and actually finding where they were, just because that's how we done it, and that was the first kind of step we took. But scaling it up even faster, one of the things we actually done is used all the kind of marketing tools at our disposal. So we had a presence across all the different social media channels, and we'd actually automated a lot of it. So we didn't have someone sitting there writing all the different Facebook posts at the start. We didn't have separate people writing Twitter posts. It was all organically created using software, where we created it once and then kind of sent it out everywhere. And one of the kind of biggest things we've done is actually use new marketing tools and actually jumped on the bandwagon really quickly. So one of the things that's kind of skyrocketed some of our growth is actually using things like website push notifications. I don't know if anyone's used them before, but it kind of at the moment especially, it's one of the easiest, quickest ways to kind of scale up your presence, just because every time someone comes to your website, they can automatically become a subscriber to your kind of notifications that you send out within kind of 20 seconds. And it takes you less than 5 to 10 minutes to set up. And that's with no tech background at all. So I set it up for one of the websites myself, and I still have no tech background, but I still managed to do it. So it's kind of taking all these marketing hacks in and kind of building on them, I think, is the best way to scale things up.
Right, brilliant, fantastic. And what about raising funds? I guess everyone can't go on Dragon's Den, unfortunately, but what tips do you have for someone who's looking to raise funds for their venture?
I think one of the best things that I've found is the SEIS, kind of the SEIS form of investing. I think that's, as far as I know, going to stick around. We're currently probably just about to go into another recession, a world recession. And there's a SEIS and EIS scheme, which I think is going to become the new lifeblood for entrepreneurs to launch whichever kind of new business they want to kind of go with. And what that does is actually make it kind of de-risk the investment for investors. So I think that's going to be the one point of call that everyone needs to kind of go about, to actually kind of launch a new thing. But I think even before that, I think the planning is going to be really important, because you're going to have a lot of people trying to get a probably decreasing pool of investment from investors, because kind of naturally the investment's going to get smaller and smaller. So it just means that you're going to have to be even more prepared, and plan things out of what's going to happen when you actually get this investment, and what you're going to do with it, and what the projections are for the future. But I definitely think that's probably the best way to start.
Yeah, you get some absolutely amazing tax reliefs from those schemes, actually. So that's quite useful advice, actually. So I'm sure our listeners will appreciate that. Okay, Deepak, what's next for you in the future then? Are there any other new ventures you're currently working on? What's in store for you?
I guess future, we've actually just launched, interestingly, we've acquired a new website in the kind of free sample space. So we've acquired another website called freestuff.co.uk very recently, only a couple of months ago now. So we're actually deep in the planning process of getting that into kind of the market and actually growing that more. What we're doing now is actually, rather than having one website, we're actually trying to dominate the industry in terms of having like a kind of like an angle for people. If they don't end up at one website, they'll end up at the second website, and we can join forces together to create a bigger audience. Because I guess one of the goals we have now is actually just to keep increasing our audience. I think across both websites now we have about 1.6 to 1.7 million members. So it's a big reach, and that number gets bigger and bigger, and the bigger that gets, the more we can kind of work with advertisers and say, listen, we've got a big audience, please do an even better deal for our users. So we kind of can use our market power to drive down prices, which ultimately benefits us, but it benefits the users, which is, I think, our main goal with everything we do.
Brilliant, fantastic. Okay, we'd just like to end the interview with some fun questions now, Deepak, which we like to ask all our guests. So, say if you were stranded on a deserted island, what is the one thing you could not live without, and what food item could you not live without?
I think the one thing that I couldn't live without is probably my phone, but mainly because I guess that comes back to a story when I was backpacking. I think I was in Peru at some point. At that point, I had about 60 websites, and I was still developing them as I was backpacking around the world. And all 60 of them, theoretically, I could control from my BlackBerry.
Oh, wow.
And my BlackBerry was BlackBerry was cool at that point, but it had all my emails on it. I could control all the hosting. I could control the sales process. I could control everything from there. So even whilst I was trekking through jungles and mountains, somehow this little BlackBerry still got coverage just to run things as I was going around, just kind of running things. So that's probably, if I was stranded there and it had an internet connection, that's probably the one thing I would need just to keep things ticking along. And the food is a bit weird answer, but I'm a big fan of garlic bread. That's just what I like genuinely enjoy over time.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've tried hundreds and hundreds of types of garlic bread, but I would take a lifetime supply of that if I could.
Fantastic. No, brilliant. And finally, Deepak, if you could invite 3 people to a dinner party, living or otherwise, who would they be and why?
I think the first one would be Richard Branson. That's probably where I got lots of my inspiration from, just because he is a serial entrepreneur now. He didn't stop at kind of just building a record net, kind of building a record company. He went on to do trains, and then kind of into space now, and then build an airline. So I think getting his insights of how you keep doing that and how you keep repeating it, because I'm already stressed out with doing 2 websites. So I was like, how would you even imagine doing another like 3, 4, 5 on top of that? So he would be great insight just into learning how he's kind of all the pitfalls that have happened and what went well and what didn't go well. The other thing is Nelson Mandela. I think that would be the one person I would definitely call, just because of kind of the life experience there of what he's actually gone through. And I think whilst he was in prison, I guess he came out of it. Was it 20 or 30 years later, and to kind of have that forgiveness for someone of actually dropping all of that, where someone kind of put you in prison, put you through so much heartache. I guess there's a lot to learn from that for everyone. Just to kind of, and he pushed the country forward straight after that too. So there's probably a lot of life experience there just to learn what went well and what he had kind of into the mindset of someone. And the other person I think I'd call is probably Bill Gates. But mainly because he's gone through so many different levels of, like, running Microsoft was an incredible thing at that point. But even what he's done now with the Bill Gates Foundation, where he's effectively helping public health in terms of actually helping organizations who are trying to kind of improve everyone's health now, is very noble and honorable thing to do. So he could have probably just sat on a Caribbean island somewhere and forgotten the world existed, but instead now he's trying to help the world become a better place. So there's probably a lot of kind of good things that you can do there.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, Deepak. Really appreciate it. It's been great speaking to you, actually, to learn about your story so far. Finally, where can our listeners find you on your websites? What are your websites currently?
So the Free Stuff website is called latestfreestuff.co.uk, and Latest Deals, the website URL is latestdeals.co.uk, but I think we're going to put them, hopefully get them in the show notes so people can click through and have a look for if they want to claim any freebies or samples.
Absolutely fantastic. Thanks again for your time, Deepak. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. Take care.
No, it was an honor being here. Thank you for inviting me.
Hi there, thanks again for listening to the Business Over Chai podcast. If you like this content, please hit subscribe, and if you have any feedback, please give us a review. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter with the handle Business Over Chai, or alternatively on our website businessoverchai.com. Thanks again for listening.